Welcome, zombie fans. This is Reanimated. My name is Stuart. It's a episode 120. It's November, middle of, and with me is AJ Conrad. Hello.
Hello.
Good day. Hello. What are we doing today? There's not a whole lot of good zombie news out there. We gobbled it all up in the last couple of shows, but there's a couple of little things we can mention. And today we're going to be talking about Cell, the 2016 film that is an adaptation of a 2006 Stephen King novel. And true to form, we are following up a Joan Cusack movie with a John Cusack movie,
Uh-huh. Yes.
which is,
Oh, those Cusacks.
nothing wrong with that. Not since Gross Point Blank has there been so much Cusack.
Mm.
Not true. Okay, however, what else is going on? We have some emoji news coming across the ticker. What's
Yeah.
that?
So lots of new emojis, hopefully getting approval in 2017. Amongst them are some fantasy creatures such as vampires and zombies. I'm surprised it took them this long. That said, I don't know if this is what they are officially putting through. We'll put this in the show notes, but I'm a little bit troubled by the zombie emoji. It looks a little too cartoony for my taste. Um, what are your thoughts, Stuart?
It looks like it's straight out of Plants vs Zombies. I feel like
Yeah,
that's what it's there. What do you know about the emoji approval process? Who approves these things?
I really don't know, but there's some interesting ones sort of up for approval in 2017, and some of them make sense. Like I don't know if you've ever like what is currently sort of the static whatever like the sort of normal the emojis that you just get as a matter of course, especially the food ones are kind of weird, and I know a lot of them are more they're not necessarily universal foods, or at least American universal foods. Like there's a lot of like interesting little emojis for things which I enjoy personally, but there's things that are missing there that seem like they should just be matter of course. Um, but like whoever approves these, I don't know if they just get like them all together and they're like, yes, no, they're not ready for that turkey leg or something like that. It's kind of interesting to think about it, and
Yeah,
what gets sort of placed, because I mean like if you look at the ones now, you feel there, and I obviously can't think of one, of course, off the top of my head, but there's some really obvious ones that don't pop up or that you think should be there. um
well, never take. I mean, you'll have to pry from my cold dead hands my poop smiley face emoji.
well, yeah. I mean the fact that that's there, it's like, yeah. So anyway, we shall see what is approved. I kind of like the werewolf one. I thought that one was kind of cool. The little shadow of the werewolf howling at the moon.
That's huge, though, for an emoji. I mean, or
I
there's too
wonder
much
if
going
these
on.
are. I wonder if these are actually what are being put forth, or they're just sort of like placeholders for what would
Samples.
actually be put in. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't taken a lot of time to read this Unicode PDF, but it talks about the like popularity of all of these different things, the griffin, the elf, the mermaid versus the goblin,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is just that one like demonic mask that you can get on
Right.
the emojis. And these are all like vastly more popular than that. And it also talks about encoding them as a single character. Yeah, so I think that those aren't necessarily the images that are going to be used potentially.
Well, we shall see, I guess.
Well,
Um,
should zombie emojis become a thing, I foresee more texting between reanimated headquarters.
agreed. Anything else in the news? I think that was pretty much it.
That's kind of it. I would also just like to throw out a continuing props to The Walking Dead for keeping keeping me in their wheelhouse because the first three episodes of season seven have been pretty good, with specific emphasis. And HA hasn't seen it yet, so I'm not going to go into any detail. Specific emphasis on the music for episode three. It's a music heavy episode, with only a couple of different tracks, but really cool. I enjoyed it a lot. And I'd be interested to hear from listeners if they wanted to share how they're enjoying season seven versus season six.
All right, well that's fair, and I have to get on watching that. I've been this week was a little distracting, admittedly, and I honestly didn't didn't want to go there. so so I will catch up probably tonight.
All right, good job. So what are we doing? We are doing Cell. I really want to put a the in front of it, but it's
I know.
article.
Well, The
It's
Cell
more
is
like
that weird Vincent D'Onofrio whatever movie that came out a while
J
ago.
Lo. Yeah, that's a
J
great.
Lo, that's right.
Um,
But this is not that. This is Cell, based upon. It's a film based upon the Stephen King novel, as Stuart mentioned. And it's weird. I don't. Did you read the book? I feel like you said you had not.
I have not read it. No.
I did read it. I read it when it first came out, and I'll be honest with you. Even when it came out, it felt a little like it had. I wondered while reading it if he had written it actually quite a bit earlier, the way certain things were unfolding. And at the time, I was living in Boston, and a lot of the action in the story, especially in sort of the initial scenes that unfold, are all around Boston. They're like in Boston Common, and so having lived in that city and was living there at the time, it admittedly made it a little creepier. And I love Stephen King as a character writer, and I feel like he does a great job in certain storytelling. But I always feel like there's a point where it misses the mark, or it just totally takes a jump off a cliff in a way that is not good.
Like the transition into the second and third acts, perhaps
Yes,
in
yes,
everything.
exactly. In
Yeah,
almost everything he does, and I heart you, Stephen King. So don't take this as I'll read everything that you ever write, even the stuff I'm not necessarily a huge fan of. But this is one of those that it's a similar transition into the third act. So, but that said, there's
are
some
you
really
still talking
great.
about the book or the movie?
I'm talking about the book.
Yeah.
And so I was, despite some of those transitions, I always feel like a lot of the Stephen King books that get made into movies, or at least some of them, um, tend to be really great, and some are not, clearly. But a lot of people can take those characters and those stories and transform it into something really interesting. And I was hoping that was the case with this film.
Well, he wrote. He was one of the writers on the screenplay for this one, and
I
he
actually feel like
changed the
that is
ending.
I feel like that is actually not a positive. I feel like those films that are successful based upon his stories are when he has nothing to do with them. I know
Yeah,
that sounds horrible, but that's
that's pretty harsh. Let me see. Dark Tower is in production, right?
yeah.
Do we know if he's going to be part of that of writing that?
I don't know, but I will tell you. I mean, this is one of his favorites, so it wouldn't surprise me if he was somehow involved.
I don't see his name on the list actually, but that's another story of his that kind of starts in one way, and then by the time you get to book, I don't even know. I didn't finish the books, but because it was a completely different kind of story by the time I got to like book
Yeah.
four. So I kind of couldn't hang with it, but this is a Stephen King ass Stephen King movie. It
Mm-hmm.
definitely feels like him, with the exception that the beginning just feels like kind of a fun zombie movie. Fun in quotes. Maybe a lot of people hate this film. I think is probably where we should start our review by saying that with
All right.
7% on Rotten Tomatoes, critics.
I would include myself in that number.
Yeah, you're not happy with it. Uh, it had a weird. Well, I guess yeah. It took from 2000. I think they started talking about making this movie right after the book came out, 2008 or so, 2009, and it didn't happen because of like director swap outs and stuff until they shot it all in 25 days in Atlanta in 2014. Like to me,
Hmm.
that is nutty. I don't know many
Yeah.
films that are made in less than a month, and I don't know that I that was kind of surprising to me. It doesn't feel rushed. I think I might be in the minority there because a lot of people obviously think this movie is the worst thing ever. But it also came out to limited. It came out to video on demand and limited release. But I think it basically got $0 in, domestically in the box office. At least that's I can't find any numbers for either what its budget was or what it did domestically and worldwide. It only made a little over about $735,000.
That is not good, but also not surprising after watching this. What did you think?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was a roller coaster of emotions. I watched it in the dark, prone with headphones on, so it was very immersive kind of watching experience for me. And I I enjoyed it. I think I must have terrible taste. No, I can't say that on a zombie review podcast.
I enjoyed no, I enjoyed part of it. I feel like, the initial mayhem. So just to give just a brief summary of the idea of this film, it's tough to call this. It's not a true zombie film. I mean, it is in the sense of the people losing their minds. So I guess it's a new iteration, sort of one. But the whole idea is that John Cusack's character is at an airport and suddenly everybody on cell phones starts acting crazy and erratically and literally foaming at the mouth. And he not being on the cell phone at the time because his cell phone died, which I think that was kind of a nice touch because everybody can experience that. Um, he's sort of he's a witness to all of this and watching everything that unfolds, and going on to find out what has happened to his son and his wife. So he's got a goal in mind, as he bands up with other survivors to be able to figure out, first of all, what's happened with all these people, but also he has the his big motivation is to find out what's happened to his son and his wife, who
And
he's
that's one of the
estranged
weak
from.
parts. That's one of the weak parts of the story too, because like the whole mission of the film is for him to find what happened to his family, but he's with all these other people who
Right,
just basically don't have like he's with a whole bunch of people with no family because
right,
everybody's just like, yeah, we're just gonna go with you and find your family, which I thought was
right.
kind of odd. The scenes in the airport before the pulse goes out are, I mean, the whole story is technophobic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a lot of sense in 2006 when the cell phones are becoming more and more ubiquitous. And, but this is also kind of tired
Right.
editorial. Like
Which is
we've
why
been,
I was saying, even in 2006, when this came out, this was, as I said, I felt like it was almost as if he had intended to publish it earlier, maybe couldn't get around to it. And there's a few different passages which I haven't read the book in a while, but I even at the time was reading it was like, wow, this probably should have come out like 2 or 3 years ago, right? So and then the film, I felt that even more. Like it was a little. I feel like this is sort of I don't know, almost a little too. It was antiquated, almost an antiquated idea already.
it was those scenes in the airport of just every person there is on a phone are just, yeah, it feels really heavy-handed. Like, oh, well, look at you all on your phones. That's bad, you
The
bad
part that I
people.
also thought was super heavy-handed, he's looking for a charger, and every charger is filled. And not
Yeah,
only they are filled with like single phones, but then they have people with multiple little, you know what I mean, multiple little chargers. How dare you, all of you guys! You just can't be unconnected.
yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't really understand why he'd just gone off a plane. Why isn't he just go leaving the airport? Why is he like hanging out in the terminal trying to plug in his phone? And what does he
right.
really have to tell his wife at this point?
Well, I mean, I think that the point of that was that he wants to go up and see his kid. He wants to see her. It's a little bit more complicated because they are estranged.
Hmm.
And I think that that was part of why he was hanging out in the airport. He almost wanted her permission to be able to come up there. And I think that was part of it. I don't think it was done very well. I agree with you. It seemed a little strange that he was just sort of, hanging in the airport. But yeah, that was a little strange. But
So the scene in the terminal when everything goes crazy, I think is actually really well done.
yeah, it was.
it goes from like normal, although, with these underlying messages of you shouldn't be on your phone so much, public people civilization. That's bad. And then it goes to, see, this is why, because you're going to turn into zombies, like literally. And
Mm-hmm.
then the he has a couple of like fights with people. He sees some crazy stuff. I think John Cusack does a great job in this scene. I mean, he does a great job throughout the whole film, but specifically in this segment of the film where he's reacting to the
Mm-hmm.
insane stuff that's happening.
Well,
He's
and he's
he's
reacting.
fantastic.
He's reacting, and the thing that I liked about how he was reacting is that he's not like suddenly the most insane black belt or martial artist. He's
Yeah,
reacting as a person, like any normal person would act. Like, oh my god, what is going on? And not just sort of cowering in a corner. Like he's definitely there's a specific scene where there's this man that's attacking this girl, and he kind of hits him with this paperweight thing he has, and but he's horrified, you know. So I feel like I feel like that was well done. I totally agree with you on that.
well, he's not a black belt. He does murder a guy with one swing of a paperweight in a plastic
It
bag.
does feel like it's a lucky strike, though. I mean, it doesn't
I
feel
guess.
as if it feels much more accidental. You know what I mean? Like he's definitely reacting to what the guy is doing to her. It's pure instinct. So I feel like that was pretty well done. And he looks back and the guy's like clearly dead, and he
Hmm.
looks just like, oh my god, what just happened? You know.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty well done. At least as well done as
Yeah.
you could get.
I also just liked like every time he did something or saw something, he looks around and there's something else insane happening, like just
The
over
guy
there.
eating the dog, I was like, what?
Yeah, that was messed up. And then like a guy with a big knife comes at him, and then the cop shows up, and then he's like, "Hey, oh," you think for a second like he's running after the cop and his partner, and like you're like, "Okay, this is gonna go okay," and then it goes really, 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 really badly.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
then,
then the transition to the subway I thought was really cool.
yeah, I thought that was cool too.
I
And
was hoping,
also, I liked the reaction. Like, so when they're in the subway, they're on like a car, and it's all these people that are basically taking refuge, and then the subway shuts down. And the reaction of everybody to the fact that they are like getting out, I was surprised more people didn't go with them.
yeah, that was
But
weird.
I also think some of those discussions are probably discussions that would happen. Like if you've ever been stuck in a subway, there's always this kind of thing like, oh well, I really hope that this gets going, and then they had the added bonus of having a T worker in there with them, who obviously is going to become a main part in the story, but who's like, yeah, this is all well and good, but if this stays shut down, this tunnel is all going to fill with water.
Is that
Because
for real?
you know what? I don't know exactly if it's real, but I would say it's Boston. It's Big Dig. Probably there's a very good possibility that is probably correct.
That's
So,
messed up.
so yeah. But everybody like, why would you be yelling at people for leaving? It's not like they're not hurting you by leaving, right? So
Yeah.
that was the one piece I was like, okay.
And honestly, if the T driver is like, "Hey, I'm getting out of here," I
I
think
think more
everybody
people
would
would have
go with,
followed.
yeah, not just one idiot. Like I was hoping the guy with the big sledgehammer was going to be a part of the ensemble, but
Me too.
oh well. So like there's an interesting mechanic here where they go underground where there's no signal and the phone zombies stop working, like they all just kind of break down.
Hmm.
And I was kind of interested in this development and how they're gonna have their zombies work. But then I feel like it doesn't really. By the time you
Explain
get
that.
to the end of the movie, it's not. You're not really sure exactly what the rules are because I feel like they change the rules a lot as this goes through.
That's one of my issues. It also in the book there was similar things where it doesn't really get into enough of why and what is actually happening. It sort of makes this jump into crazy, like, mystical Stephen King territory, which they do a
Yeah,
lot in The Stand, which is what a lot of people have an issue with, the
yeah,
whole hand of God thing.
yeah.
Which it's like, oh, like people just want a reason. They want, it kind of starts out as one type of movie or one type of book or story, and it turns into something else that it's almost like I didn't really fully think about what this is, so we're just going to make a leap and hope people fill in the blanks with it however they want to. I don't know. It's a
Well,
little
that's.
weird.
I think yeah, we're probably going to belabor this point as we talk about it, but this is Stephen King's greatest weakness as
Hmm.
far as I'm concerned in his storytelling because it happens over and over again. But to follow our heroes, DJ Liquid is an awesome member of the ensemble. He has like four lines
Hmm.
and then gets an axe in the chest. I was
Yep.
happy with the way they were willing to kill off cast members.
Yeah, they were.
And I thought that that was refreshing. You're like, oh, okay, so this is our little band. Oh, nope, you're dead.
No, it's
Okay,
not.
moving on. So, other notables are Alice, the girl from upstairs. She makes it through most of the film. Stacy Keach, who makes an appearance as the headmaster.
Yeah.
And others like who are even in it for less time, but the film does a good job, I think, as far as zombie films go, of introducing new people, making you care about them, and then murdering them.
Yep. And it does a good job at doing that pretty quickly. So,
Yeah, like it makes you care about the headmaster, and it makes you care about even that English bartender.
right.
In it with he has like
And
one line.
he has one line and it's about loving English food or something. So,
Yeah,
and you
but I'm like,
still are
oh yeah,
sad,
he's
and you're still sad when he dies.
yeah.
And then the headmaster does this really great job, or the script or the writers or whatever you want to say, like the ensemble does a great job where they're talking about what's happened at the school very quickly. You can see the bond with him and the students and the main student. And you feel horrible when he bites it.
Yeah. So these are things that the film does well. Yeah.
I also one of the scenes that I thought was it was darkly funny, but it's the scene where John Cusack and where they're where they're driving the truck to sort of like take care of
Oh yeah.
the horde, the sleeping zombie horde, and basically it was. I think they filled the truck with gasoline. Is that
Yeah. Yeah, that
yeah?
was the idea.
And John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson's characters are just driving through and they get stuck and Samuel's like, put it in a lower gear, and John Cusack's like, I don't know, there might be a head or something caught in there, and like there's just this really weird. I felt like that whole scene was very strange but oddly funny. You know, obviously before they light them all on fire, but it was just like a very odd little interlude. And I did like how the whatever the infected, whatever you want to call them, I thought that the effects showing them flocking and showing them when they are all sort of part of the same wave and they're opening their mouths, that was pretty creepy.
Yeah, the noises they make are very strange. The
And they're sort of acting in unison. Like I
mhm.
thought that they're flocking and all that, and their sort of drony behavior was I thought was pretty cool.
And honestly, the scenes of them like getting out of Boston were cool. There was an interesting dynamic between Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson. Jackson's playing he's being a very subdued version of Samuel L. Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like a calm, reasonable, quiet guy. Cusack is also like calm, reasonable, and quiet. So there's an interesting dynamic there that you're not used to in zombies stuff. I feel like there's this is like a very measured response. It feels like
Right. So you
so
don't
that
have a lot
makes
of that back and forth or tension between characters that you sometimes see, and sometimes overblown and over the top.
yeah, and yeah. So they're responding to issues other than the kind of illogical version of things where everybody wants to go see John Cusack's wife and son. Uh, they're just like they're not having any disagreements about how to do things. They're just all right. We're gonna go to New Hampshire. We're gonna basically walk there from Boston, and so let's get it out on the road. You know.
Right. And I also thought that was kind of funny with John Cusack and Samuel Jackson, like their Clay and Tom, their characters respectfully. They were, you know, in Clay's apartment, and the neighbor comes in as Alice, and she's, you know, just killed her mother and whatever. And then they have this moment where you think that they're going to have to fight with her about her going with them. And she's like, can I go with you? And they're like, sure. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's no tension there. It's just like, okay, yeah, we're gonna all go together. Like there was you thought there might be a fight or something, but there just wasn't.
No, there's very little intergroup tension until later with the ice cream truck people, and you're not really sure what's going on there. But that doesn't even become anything crazy either. I feel like the film does take a turn from, zombie apocalypse road trip, right when they get to the school and you start hearing the music and you
Hmm.
get this like explication from the headmaster and Jordan, who's like, I'm a scholarship boy.
Which is
And
also a super weird thing to say. Who the hell cares?
in
Like, are you
the
trying
zombie
to say you don't
apocalypse,
don't have a cell phone because you were a scholarship boy? Is
it's
that
like,
where he was going? I don't know. It
I
was a
don't
little
have
odd.
money. And then John Cusack's like, well, good for you. I felt like that was such a Stephen King thing
It
to
was
put in there.
such a Stephen King thing.
It's like, this is really interesting detail, but nobody's going to give a shit about this at this
No.
point. But that is where the movie to me became more Stephen Kingy. Um, did you notice that the song that they're singing or playing in the stadium is the Trollolol song from the internet? It's like a huge meme.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a song, I think it's called I Am Very Glad as I Am Finally Returning Back Home is the name of the song.
Yes.
And it's by a Russian dude. And but it became a meme because the guy just sounds like he's saying the whole time. And it is a great song. But it was a very strange choice. Like who came up with that? Or does that play into the fact to the book where it's like this has all been caused by a hacker?
Yeah. And that's the whole thing is that in the book, it's a computer program that's gone totally awry.
And is the red hoodie guy,
He is in the book. He's called the Raggedy Man.
is he a hacker?
He so this is the piece that's kind of like weird, and as I said, it's a little bit where we're like, we get into like the mystical as opposed to the like true
Yeah.
science cause, and they make him this sort of flag like Randall Flag like enemy, and
Yeah.
that's what it reminded me of a lot. And it's not clear that he is actually the hacker or that he is just like a program it like a programmed result of the um
Of
of
the worm, the
the
virus or
worm or
whatever.
whatever you want to call and he's wearing like a Harvard University sweatshirt, which is also like, oh, Stephen King, seriously.
What, does he hate Harvard or something?
He's got a thing about
Rich
like,
smart kids.
yeah, probably.
Uh
But
so
anyway, so again, it's like one of those things where he like appears in dreams, like very Randall, like
yeah.
and this is a way like they're somehow getting like bits of the story about the phoners and about what's happening and how things are going to take over, and it's like, you know, it's all like psychic power and stuff like that, and so it's one of those things where I wish it was a little bit more clear about what he is, and the fact that they even call him the Raggedy Man.
Well, in
I don't
this
know.
movie, they're calling him the president of the internet, which is
Right.
also super Stephen Kingy.
Yep.
He comes up with these names for things like Captain Trips and for the plague in the stand, and all these they work to us to an extent, but they're so signature that it's hard then to disassociate him from just a story.
Right.
And maybe that's the way he likes it because hell, he is a character in the stand, which is exactly when I started deciding I wasn't going to read any more of it. Not the stand, sorry, the Dark Tower.
Right.
But yeah, so from that point, which is basically only halfway, like that's at the 45-minute or so or 50-minute part of the film when they get to the boarding school, shit starts going sideways and weird. And then yeah, they do all start sharing dreams at the drive-in. And they're all dreaming about this character, this whether he's the Raggedy Man, president of the internet. He's also a character in John Cusack's in Clay's graphic novel. And it's interesting. Like there's almost some blame placed on Cusack by Samuel
Mm-hmm.
L. Jackson's character, but not really. He's just like, you saw this coming. You drew this guy, but
Right.
then it doesn't really escalate beyond that.
And it doesn't come to any sort of conclusion either.
No.
Like it's just sort of this weird little one-off thing, and you never find out that. And I will also say like that the ending of the book and this film are drastically different.
Right.
And from the reviews and things I read and things about this adaptation, Stephen King took a lot of flack for the ending of the book, so rewrote the film
Yeah.
to, I guess, make people happier. I don't know that he did though. I
Well,
mean,
so the book essentially ends is a happy ending, right? Like they win.
it's not quite a happy ending. I mean, it the book ends with John. So the book ends with John Cusack destroying the tower, and the way that the mechanism with which they do that is interesting. So I think it would have been tough to explain this in a film version of it, but the pulse that caused all the people to be zombies or be whatever they are gets corrupted. So you have some people that are sort of half phoners, and they show that a little bit with the character who gives him the phone in the film.
You
And
think he was a half phoner?
that's what he was kind of supposed to be. And part of
Ah,
why he killed himself was because he didn't want the phoners to figure out his plan, and he had packed the truck with explosives, which they do show in this, or at least they try to show.
no, they
And
showed it.
in the end, he John Cusack's character blows up the whole cell phone tower, and his son ultimately has gotten one of these corrupt drone signals, and this other person has reprogrammed it to basically anybody who's gotten the sort of like tweaked version of the virus can be saved if they get reprogrammed, or that's the idea. So the end of the book is him putting a phone up to his son's ear, and you hope that he will turn back normal again. And
Which
that's
seems so far fetched, but
right.
okay. Um,
And in the end, like when he blows up the cell phone tower in the book, everybody, all the normal people, kind of go up to Canada to wait out the rest of these phoners are just kind of wandering around with no leader. They're not quite dangerous, but they're still a little bit sort of whatever, and they're just waiting for them to die off, which is also like kind of weird. So, like I understand why people don't like the end, but the film I feel just was kind of whatever. So
do you have any idea how long a cell phone tower can keep its charge if it's off the grid, if there's no
I
power?
have no idea. My guess is not long.
I'm just reading it. Cell phone towers typically have battery backup arrangements that support operations for 2 to 4 hours, depending on traffic.
Okay.
So that essentially undermines the entire premise of
Everything.
the film.
The other thing is that just in terms of, um, I don't know, the number of people that would actually be affected. The interesting thing that, and this was one of the things that bothered me in 2006 while reading the book, is that even at that time I was not on the cell phone or mobile phone for phone calls that much. It was already kind of going over to texting.
Hmm.
So the idea that that many people would be infected in that manner seemed totally implausible to me. So there's that too.
Yeah, they do pay a little attention to texting because his kid is a texter. Cusack
Right.
makes that point. Um, so other crazy things that start happening. The whole bar scene is a little bit crazy. Like they actually one of the things I kept noticing was how much they were drinking.
Yeah.
Like Clay and Tom are constantly, well,
Right.
every time they like stop moving, they're basically swigging whiskey.
Right. And you and I have talked about this in relation to other films as well. Like I don't know, I feel like the last thing I would be wanting to do is to be inebriated. And we've talked about this in the context of Walking Dead and Shaun of the Dead, and all, this is often a trope that we see, where people are like, okay, F it, I'm just gonna drink now. And I just feel like you wouldn't be. I don't know that you're gonna be like, I mean, I know it's scary and all, and you may want to numb yourself a little bit, but I just feel like you're especially in this context, are going to be on your guard, and um, not basically vulnerable, which is what it makes you. So
Yeah, and with little, well, they don't have little kids, but they have like a couple of teenagers with them that you'd think, okay, maybe we shouldn't just get hammered and lose you.
right.
The kids, like nothing comes of that, but they are certainly sleeping very heavily when the blonde lady gets up and goes to the door. And I liked this part of the
That was
film.
creepy.
This was a good jump scare,
Yep.
and it was like she gets up and goes to the door and she just locks it, which I'm like, that's clever. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she's not gonna open the door because she's not an idiot. Um, so they treated this scene respectfully for the genre. They were like, "You're not an idiot. You're gonna get got in a way that we weren't expecting," and that's how that goes. Um, But then, Cusack responding to this or waking up and discovering what's happened is pretty scary.
Yep.
And somehow she must have opened the door, right? Because there's a bunch of other people in there all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's just you don't
But
see that.
she's done it. I mean, I think she's done it in the dream sequence, but she's actually doing it in reality. Like, so this is one of the things where it's like, well, how does this actually work? You know what I mean?
What do you mean? What dream sequence?
Well, it felt like because she kept looking back at the door, and then it was like she hadn't actually locked it. Remember?
Oh, I mean, I think she locked it, but then the keys were moving in the door or like swaying, like those pressure, and then she puts her ear to it, like she can hear something. And I think the idea is that they infected her through the door with the signal.
Okay. I didn't quite get that. I just thought it was a dream sequence that actually turned out to be real and that she was sleepwalking, but that makes sense. Okay.
At least that was my assumption
Nope,
after
that's
she
to
then,
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
yeah, which is, like they hadn't seen them do that before, and that's pretty crazy. So then there's a big shootout where everybody we just met gets killed, including Alice, who goes out in a really nasty way.
Yeah, it
And
was
then
pretty awful.
her last scene is her like whispering insane things and then just dying. And you're like, wow, that was rough.
Yep.
Um, I don't know why Cusack during the scene says, "I'm so sorry" to like the scholarship boy Jordan
Mm-hmm.
when he's known Alice longer than everybody. He's just like, all right, let's go. So that things are already getting weird because we're having these dreams, and then we meet the ice cream van people. No, we find his house, right? We go to his
Mm-hmm.
house and he finds the note from his kid. We start to see these signs about cash whack, which is another Stephen King sort of thing. These signs, this nod to whether or not these are phoners making these signs or humans. I think in the book it's just like a telepathic message from the phoners telling uninfected people to go there. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And so we're not sure what this means, but then after finding his wife, who looks just like the Raggedy Man or the president of the internet as they're fighting, and then you don't see it's really her until she's been shot several times. And that was another kind of tense scene, I thought. At least it
Yeah.
was at 12:30 last night.
Yeah. It was definitely intense. And I mean, I guess that's a little bit of to me the part of this which I think with a little bit more care, this could have been a more interesting film because these little intense pieces can be really. I thought that they were really moving, even though I didn't like the film overall. And I felt like it wouldn't have taken that much to get this to kind of a classic film level, at least one that would be entertaining to watch again. I don't know.
Is it really just the ending that does it for you?
No, I mean I feel like there's just some big gaps and in the storytelling and sloppiness, and I felt like they had a great cast to work with and great actors, and that the script just didn't really pull it all together. It wasn't tight enough. The ending does bother me, and it feels very. I mean, it does feel very Stephen King, honestly, but I don't know. I just feel like overall there were so many more pieces that could have gotten a little bit more interesting, but to make this whole, but I didn't feel that it ever got there.
Yeah. Actually, I also had the story in the wrong order. They definitely ran in with the ice cream people before they then went to his house
Yeah,
because it's right after he kills his wife and he's
right.
like, "I'm going to Cashwhack," and he takes the truck full of explosives.
Yep.
Um, the final scene is like a spectacle
Yeah.
that insofar as that's cool, that's interesting. It's not explained in any way like why they're all there.
No.
Um, and then honestly,
So
after
in
this
in
scene
the book,
is
the reason that they're all there and the reason they're all gathered is that they're gonna do another full pulse that can be heard by people not on cell phones.
okay,
So it's supposed to basically take over everybody that is not infected with the virus at this point.
okay,
So
the
but they don't explain that in the film at all.
no, it's just like a giant flock going around this big
Tower.
cell tower, and um, frankly, by the absolute end of the film, when you realize that he's had a vision and you see Clay as part of the flock, like he's been infected and he's just part of this giant throng of zombies.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, has this whole thing been a
Right. That's what it kind of felt like too, right?
it? Yeah, has because he talks about halfway through the film, he's like, is this all just my dream? Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's having the dreams that he's having about the president of the internet.
Right.
And so by the end, when you suddenly see him there, I'm like, well, has he been a zombie
This whole time, since
since
the get
Logan,
go. Yeah.
or since they started having this sharing the dreams at the drive-in? Because some other weird stuff happens at the drive-in when they walk outside and there's a pile of cell phones outside that wasn't there
Yeah.
before. So that's when it starts becoming a psychological thriller, and you just kind of aren't, or psychological horror maybe. And the problem with that is that then you don't know what's real and what's not. And for me, that limits how much I can be invested in the story.
Right. The other thing which I felt like they did better in the book than they did in this film was dealing with his wife being infected and how scary that would be to see a loved one. I mean, in the film, Clay kills his wife with the help of Samuel L. Jackson, and then has this horrible realization about what just happened.
Hmm.
In the book, there are these weird glimpses of her, and she keeps popping up. And then when he actually sees her as part of the crowd, it's pretty heartbreaking and horrible. Which I felt had a lot more effect on, like, you just kind of saw him broken. And I don't feel like it had the same effect with how they treated it in the film.
Okay.
So I felt like that was something that they kind of could have been improved upon. Because it's so quick, like once he kills her, that you don't really see. I mean, and I think that's part of it, is that he has this weird hope up until he sees her in the flock, when he sees her like with the rest of them, and he just kind of crumbles. So I feel like that was something that they didn't do quite as well. So
Yeah.
anything else? I mean, I feel like you view it a little bit more positively than I do. I think I have this feeling that it could have been a little bit better with just some tweaking, and maybe not so heavy handed in the technophobic sphere.
Yeah.
And given where I kind of feel like, given where technology has gone and the different things, they could have used different mechanisms to make this a little bit more on point for the year that we are living in.
Well, how can you think of any specifics?
I don't know. I just think what I was saying, like there was a mechanism through the texting. Maybe there could have done a better job at explaining the virus. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they just couldn't, and that's why they went the way they went. But
Yeah.
it just seemed a little, as I said, antiquated. That's all.
Yeah. Well, the other film that we wanted to review that treats the same material, and I forget if it's The Signal or Signal, is similarly dated right away. Like this is just a medium. Like this story gets old really quickly, and that one's almost entirely through televisions and and screens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you could even approach it that way with smartphones. Is like, oh, you're looking at your Facebook feed or whatever on your phone, and now suddenly there's a QR code that makes you crazy or whatever.
Yeah. No, they could have done it that way. You're right.
But so really, this was a ride. I think Stephen King is great at setting up awesome stories. I just don't know that he has followed through,
Yep.
and
Um,
that's kind of right here with with this one too. Samuel L. Jackson and Tom Cusack do a great job. The rest of the cast is good, so they carry it for all intents and purposes. And like the film basically ends not knowing well much about anything, because then you're just, I was second guessing like who was real, what happened when. But I think we can sort of believe that Tom and Jordan, and I think her name's Denise, the ice cream truck woman,
yep.
are managed to survive and run away.
Yep. But
That's
yeah.
that's the silver lining, if there is one. Otherwise,
I
it's
mean,
just like the,
I will say, like, there were parts of this that I enjoyed. I did not sit through this and be like, oh my God, when is this going to be over? Like, there's definitely bright spots in this. I don't know that I would have given it a 7%, which is what the Rotten Tomatoes folks gave it, but I wouldn't give it like two thumbs up, basically.
Rotten Tomatoes method is just
It's not
positive versus
exactly
negative, right?
perfect. So,
Well, it's binary, right? So every positive review, there just were way more negative reviews for
right.
this. But yeah, I guess that's it. That's all we can really say.
So, if you have watched Cell or have some thoughts on it, certainly shoot us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can send us a tweet, reanimatedpcast. And next up, we are going to continue our review of Walking Dead. We're up to season 5, and we will start out that particular review season. We'll probably do 2 or 3 episodes at a time, as we've done in the past, to kind of keep it rolling. But look forward to joining you next time, and see you next week, Stuart.
Yeah, see you next time with that. And hey, guys, if you listen to the show and you enjoy it, go ahead and, or if you hate it and we want you to let us know. Leave us a review on iTunes or and we're also on Google Play now. So hit us up, let us know. And thanks for listening.
Cheers.